So I counted the number of videos that I've completed so far on my YouTube channel. More than 3 dozen different memories about growing up in Dalton on the south side of Chicago, living and working in New York City, all kinds of memories. But now I would like to begin recording some memories about when I started traveling, teaching and traveling. And I'll tell you how that all came about. Um, I had been living on the north side of Chicago with my friend Michael, my very good friend Michael, in a neighborhood called Uptown. This was in 1994, 1995, because Michael died at home of complications from HIV. But that's where he wanted to be, and he was among his family, his crazy family of origin and his fabulous family of choice. And it was a lovely apartment, big 2 bedroom apartment and all, with a wood burning fireplace. I mean, it was really nice. But it wasn't the same without Michael. So, the landlord was he was wonderful, I remember, very, very supportive. And he said, David, take all the time you want. If you want to get a new roommate, we'll be happy to have you as a tenant. Or if you choose to move, we'll even help you find a different place to live. Well, I didn't want to stay in that place. It reminded me of the wonderful times that I shared with my friend Michael. So I took the landlord on his offer of finding a new place, and this one was a little studio up farther north along the lake, near Lake Michigan, in a neighborhood called Edgewater. I think the cross street was Foster Avenue. I'm not really sure. It's been more than 20 years or so. Anyway, so I moved into this little studio, and I remember there was a diner not far, right around the corner from where I lived. And especially on weekends, Saturday or Sundays, I like to go to the diner for breakfast, get a Sunday newspaper, and just spend time, at this diner. I don't remember the name of it. Well, I was there one morning. It was in Michael died in February of 1995, so this was in the spring, maybe, of 1995. And there was an old drunken white trash waitress. She was wonderful. Her name was Sharon. And she was a big fag hag as well. And so she was taking my order. I liked French toast a lot. On Sundays and all. And she she took me under her wing, and she introduced me to this group. It was a big group of geriatric homosexuals who they had been having breakfast at that diner since World War II, I think, and they also took me under their wing. It was wonderful the way they welcomed me into their group. And there were some real characters there. There was a very old retired hairdresser. I think his real name was Chester. I think I gave him the nickname of the Lindbergh baby because he was quite old. Lovely man. And well, the big kahuna of this group was Sergio Gonzalez, who I became very good friends with. He was this loud, very entertaining Mexican-American queen, and he was an accountant. He was the very first Mexican-American graduate of Roosevelt University, I think, way back in the 60s or so. He was wonderful. He was great. And he had there a couple of friends of his from Brazil. One of them was named Mauricio, and the other one, I'm not exactly sure what his name was. It might have been Roberto or something like that. Their nickname was the Brazilian Lizards. They didn't speak a lot of English. Mauricio was crazy, in a good way, but crazy. I remember he drove a cab. He didn't speak English, but he was very entrepreneurial. He had a atlas map of the city of Chicago. He knew all the city streets on the north side, south side, west side. He knew the city. And he had this cab, a big old yellow cab. And he would drive around the city and as a cab driver, but he didn't speak English. And his boyfriend, Roberto, was very nice as well. And, well, I remember their visas were expiring. They had been in Chicago for a long time. They wanted to stay, but I think they were getting deported back to Brazil. So, not Oscar. What was his name? Sergio, sorry. Sergio suggested that he and I could go down to Brazil after Mauricio and Roberto moved back there and have a visit in Rio de Janeiro, which I had never been to before. I'm not sure if Sergio had been or not. He had traveled internationally as I had, but never to Brazil. So I remember even before I went to Brazil, I studied the Portuguese language in Chicago. I wanted to have at least a working knowledge, Oi, tudo bem? Just to be a little bit more comfortable and all. So I studied a little bit in Chicago. But then Sergio and I went to Rio de Janeiro, had an amazing time. I think we stayed about 3 weeks or so, because it's a long way to go. You just don't want to go for a weekend or so. So we stayed a while. Sergio booked us into this downtown hotel that it was cheap. It was clean, thank goodness. It wasn't scary, but it was. Yeah, a little tired and all. It wasn't Michelin 5-star, but it was centrally located. And that beautiful city, gorgeous city. I love Brazil, and I ended up going back. But anyway, I don't want to make this video too long, but that's how I got to Brazil. And in the next video, I'll start telling you how I began teaching. Be fabulous.